Good evening. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Licenses and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pocket as you entered the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and comment on agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who is wishing has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Licenses and Development Committee and declare a quorum present, just barely. The minute taker is participating remotely, so committee members, please be sure to turn your microphones on when you're speaking. And I want to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. We have a pretty brief agenda, but we're going to jump right in. The first item is the Keene Downtown Group's request to use city property for the Ice and Snow Festival on February 1st.
I can intro while the applicant is coming up. If
Yeah,
that's
come
okay.
on up.
Thank you. So we have had our internal staff protocol meetings with the applicant present, and I just want to make a couple of comments regarding this year's event. So they are expecting about 7,000 in attendance. So they looked at last year's attendance and used some modeling software to come up with a good estimate of how many people would be in attendance. And I know there were concerns just last year about congestion of pedestrians, basically. Mm-hmm. And so they've made some good efforts to spread out the ice sculptures and only put them in places where there's more room for the pedestrians to queue up around those displays. They are adding actually 3 this year in the space where the farmers market typically takes place over the summer, which is nice. It'll also spread out the participants. So they're expecting 12 ice carvers, and the number of family-friendly activities. They're adding a rail jam this year on Commercial Street with snow to be brought in from Granite Gorge.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
Which is-
Maybe we'll get some natural snow.
Yeah, right. I think they're going to need more than a little. And they are going to close Railroad Street for the train ride for the kids, as they've done in years past. They're also this year looking to close down Church Street for arts and crafts vendors and Commercial Street, as we said, for the Rail Jam demonstration. There will also be a food court at Railroad Street in the former Vision Financial parking lot.
Okay.
Campfires and s'mores on Railroad Square. We're going to have the airport plow or snow blower, I guess, there as well this year, which is always a big hit. And I just had a thought. I'll have to come back to that. And then the Colonial Theater will be participating as well with playing films for the children for free.
Okay, sounds great. And do you want to state your name for us?
Sure. I'm Mark Rebellard. I'm a resident of Keene. I live at 64 Blackberry Lane. I'm the chair of the Keene Downtown Group and the committee lead for the Keene Ice and Snow Festival.
Okay, we just heard from staff. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the festival this year?
What a great introduction. Thank you, Rebecca. That was fantastic. Gosh, there isn't much to add. Yeah, that's right. We've seen increased traffic for the festival, which is fantastic. The festival serves 2 purposes. One is to create a free, fun day for families with lots of activities, and everything's free. You don't have to worry about bringing your children to something where you have to pay $10 for a balloon or $10 for face painting and so on. And then the other aspect is to create a really great sales day for downtown merchants. And a survey put out by the Keene Downtown Group last year indicated that downtown merchants over a typical Saturday in February saw an increase in sales of anywhere from 30 to 300%. And that's because they're encouraged, all our visitors are encouraged to visit the stores. Arts Alive has created these fantastic little stuffed Yetis, and we have a Yeti scavenger hunt that brings them into the stores. 12 stores participated in free hot chocolate up and down Main Street to bring them in. And then there's all kinds of activities that everybody, that the downtown merchants bring to this festival as well. I think we're achieving both, and thank you so much to the city for all of your help with putting this together. It's truly an easy event to put on with the support that we get from this team.
Well, I think that the city really appreciates it. It's a nice break in the middle of sometimes, cold, harsh winters here, and the ice sculptures get to stay up for a day or two.
That's right.
As long as we've got weather that will maintain them. And yeah, it's a beautiful addition to the downtown in the winter. So I've really appreciated the effort that you guys put in. Does anyone from the committee have any questions?
I think they did a great job.
Thank you.
Councilor Host?
Yes.
Do you second that? All right.
I'll move.
Hold on
Wait,
one
no,
second.
no.
I'm just going to see if there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak about the event. All right. Seeing none, I would ask for a motion.
I will move to recommend that the Keene Downtown Group be granted a street fair license to use downtown city rights of way for the purposes of conducting merchant sidewalk sales, as well as the use of downtown city property on Central Square, Church Street, Commercial Street, Gilboa Avenue, Main Street, Railroad Street, and designated parking spaces on Central Square and Main Street to conduct the Ice and Snow Festival on Saturday, February 1st, 2025, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and reserving an inclement weather date of Sunday, February 2nd, 2025. In addition, the applicant is permitted to close off a portion of Railroad Street from Main Street to the exit of the Wells Street parking structure, Church Street from Main Street to Hannah Grimes' back parking lot, and Commercial Street from Main Street to Commercial Street parking lot. The petitioner is further granted permission for 2 small outdoor campfires in enclosed fire pits on city property adjacent to Railroad Square, subject to obtainment of a burn permit from the Fire Prevention Bureau. This permission is granted subject to the signing of a revocable license and indemnification agreement, submittal of a certificate of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, listing the city of Keene as an additional insured, submittal of signed letters of permission from the owner for any use of private property, and compliance with any recommendations of city staff. In addition, the petitioner is granted use of the requested parking spaces free of charge under the provisions of the free parking policy. The petitioner agrees to absorb the cost of any city services over and above the amount of city funding allocated in the FY25 community events budget.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Haas, seconded by Councilor Jones. Any questions on that motion? Anything standing out? I know PLD's motions are often lengthy. Anyone from the public have any questions? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. That'll go up to council next Thursday, and looking forward to having you guys back.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
So item 2 on our agenda this evening are the sign code modifications requested by Mayor Khan. I'm going to welcome the mayor up to the table to join us to talk about his proposals in a second here.
This one. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor. Do you want to introduce your letter to us?
I would. Thank you, Chairman Bosley, and members of the committee. I penned this letter after it came to my attention that there were businesses in the industrial zone with blade signs that had been asked to remove them based on our land development code in the section 10.3. And I got to say, anything that we can do to assist the workforce of our industrial businesses in the city, I want to be the advocate for that, as I think many of my council colleagues do as well. I think this is a fairly simple and easy lift for us with that as the background theme for why we wish to do this. I think the industrial zones stand out distinct. In the instance where the sign was asked to be removed, there is a minimum of 50 feet from the roadway. There is no sidewalk that would be obstructed. There is no view that would be obstructed by a blade sign. It is there simply to call attention to the workforce needs of the employer. It is, again, my purpose for bringing this forward. What I anticipate would occur as a result of this is that the committee would ask for an ordinance to be prepared that would provide for an exclusion to Section 10.3, and I can suggest some wording that I suspect the Community Development Department will find its own, but in the letter, it's mostly there, that blade signage be permitted in the industrial zone where the sign does not interfere with travel or maintenance of the right-of-way.
Okay, great, thank you. I just pulled up a map. It was not included in our packet, but it is accessible on the city website of so I can see directly like what the industrial zone is. And are you intending to include, I think, industrial park as well, or just the industrial zone in your question?
And the park.
And the park, okay. All right, so I think that in our packet, we also have included the original sign code where it refers to the prohibitions of signs. And city attorney, I don't know if do we get to call you city attorney now?
I'll answer anyway.
How are these signs in this sign code, where are they referred to under? It doesn't say blade signs directly in here.
Right. So there's a section that's in the LDC that's not with your packet. That's the definitions section.
Okay.
There's a number of types of signs that are defined in there, as well as just signs in general.
Okay.
We do not have a definition for blade signs.
Okay, so do we know what the premise behind the decision to allow or not allow them would be if we don't have a definition for them? Are we rolling them under some other terminology?
Right. So I have this information from our planning department, so they'll have to correct me, but my understanding is there's a broader category of types of signs, which are animated signs.
Okay.
That we just conceptually have not allowed. And so blade signs, or at least whatever type of sign I think is substantively being talked about here, is an animated type of sign.
Okay, so I don't know if it's appropriate to ask city staff to come up and join us at this point, if that would be okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. So to answer your question, so we've been talking about these as blade signs, just for anyone at home who's maybe looking this up. I think a more appropriate term would be, is blade sail sign, or another common name would be a sail sign or a feather sign. So
Okay.
these are signs, they're vertical signs that I just looked up a definition to have something to read to you, but it contains a harpoon-style pole or staff driven into the ground or supported by means of an individual stand. Again, it may also be called a sail sign or a blade sail, and it's made of a flexible material so that they're designed to attract your attention to a specific event, or, I think in the specific instance that the mayor is talking about, it was a business that's trying to hire employees, and so they move in the wind. And so under our sign code, any sign that moves falls under animated. And so you'll see under that, I believe it's in your packet, the table 10-2 prohibited signs. It includes animated signs.
It does, yes.
One of the exceptions is, for example, a flag. So a flag is considered animated under our code. Yeah.
And I guess that's where I was trying to get to, because when I read through this prior to the meeting, I I didn't notice blade sign being called out specifically, and I was trying to make that connection of how we were determining what category it would fall under in the list of prohibited signs. So we're considering it an animated sign. So in this instance, if we wanted to make a change, could it be something as simple as on the exceptions column of this chart, we could add that there are designations like for other types of signs for districts, and we could just add it in there, and that would give allowance for that?
I believe so, yes. And I think what we are hoping to do, if this committee is open to the idea, is rather than coming back to you with an ordinance to submit for a first hearing, we'd like to come back to you at your next meeting with a preliminary, like just presentation, not even necessarily a formal proposal, but just a more in-depth discussion about what it is exactly that you're looking for, so that when we do submit an ordinance for first reading, it's hopefully going to be something that can get through the process in one go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just because we're talking about process, once we've given you some sort of direction, we'd have to submit something that would go before the joint committee.
Yes, it would get introduced to city council, get referred to joint committee, and then go through the standard process. Yeah.
Okay. So do we have questions at the committee? Counselor Jones?
Just two things. We did deal with this a number of years ago. It was a food stand over on Emerald Street that had, and at that time, we called them feather signs. But I think we're talking about all about the same thing anyway. And animated, I think, covers it all. And I just, and just to add one thing to what the mayor said, I think they're nice. And in an industrial area, they add color and they add a little something extra to the property. I don't think they should be for recruiting purposes only. You know, I think if somebody wants the signs in there, they meet those conditions, it would be fine for that. That's just my 2 cents.
Counselor Haas?
Thank you, Chair. My 3 cents maybe. The signs are great, and we should do it. The maintenance of the signs and making sure they're installed, because they're intended as temporary signs, and to have them properly secured so that they don't fly all around. They can't damage other property or other people, and then some kind of oversee that they are maintained properly and are removed if they get torn or they're damaged. We do have a paragraph that addresses maintenance of it, but I'll want to emphasize that as we move forward with this. But we can use the wording that's in there, but we'll just make sure we retain that they have to be properly erected, securely installed, and then properly maintained. I don't know if we ever get into how long they might be up. That's permitting. I really don't want to go there. But
I do, Counselor.
Okay, well, it's always more opinions.
That's
But I like maintenance of them. Thank you.
It's a great segue, because my question is that I don't know. I know with other types of signs, we do have timeframes that they're allowed to be up for. They're not permanent signs, and these are not intended to be permanent signs. I do have the same concerns as Counselor Haas, that they're maintained and that they are not allowed to fall into disrepair, or that they're not attached in a way that's safe for vehicles and pedestrians. Also, that they're away from the roadway edge far enough that all of those things can be taken into consideration. And whether, I think at some point we should have the discussion about whether or not there should be some limitations, if they can be up, a cumulative amount of time per year, or if they could be allowed to be up all year. And I don't know if I have an opinion about it yet, but I think that we need to have a conversation at least around that and what's appropriate. And I also want to bring up that another counselor has reached out to me and wants to hear from the committee if we would be open to extending the conversation to the commerce zone, that there's some interest in allowing these in the commerce zone as well. I do think that starts to complicate the conversation, because the commerce encompasses a lot of different streets with different characteristics. I think that the industrial zone, I'm very comfortable with, but as the conversation continues, we should be considering that. I think it will come up at the full council.
Thank you.
Counselor Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Do we have any regulations about timing for signs or how long they can be erected, temporary signs at this time?
Yes, so there are, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know that we do allow for temporary signs. I want to say it's something like 14 days or there's something in there for temporary signs. We do, if you wanted to put in some sort of time limitation for feather signs, they are meant to be temporary, and part of the reason for that is that they are not meant to be out in high wind conditions. Like I said, one of their alternative names is a sail sign, so they will blow away. So that those are all things that would be reviewed at the time that a sign permit is issued. We actually, even though this is in our zoning code, we have our building staff review the sign permits because just for that reason, to look at the structural integrity and make sure that they're going to be safe for the public.
Often these are just base weighted signs, so they're not actually staked to the ground or driven in the ground. So we got to be a little more careful with them.
And am I correct? I'm not reading the full sign code, but am I correct in recalling that there are some limitations to like those signs that can be placed for open enrollment for schools, or I don't know if there would be considered sandwich signs, that there's like a limitation of how many days per month they can be out?
I am not an expert in the sign code, so I don't know.
Which is totally fair. And I just recall about a decade ago running into this personally, so it's just ringing a bell. But I think if we can look at how we've approached other limitations on signs and compare it and make sure that we're doing something that offers some consistency, if that's the direction we go in, that would make me happy. I like things that are consistent in our land development code. Counselor Jones, you have something else to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, we do have some recommended motions. I don't think either one works here. I think, and I know we have to go to public yet, we're not ready for a motion, but I think the motion would be to send it to the mayor and ask him to send it to joint committee.
I think we need something to send to joint committee. Joint committee needs a fully fleshed out draft ordinance.
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, if I
Yes,
may,
please.
what staff would like, if you're willing to do this, is to come back to you at your next meeting with, again, an informal proposal, kind of just to test out, to make sure that we've heard everything correctly, that what you like, what you see, kind of, yeah, get through some of those details. So I think the appropriate path would be to put this item on more time at the moment. And then after your next meeting, if we feel like we're ready, we could then develop a more formal ordinance package and submit an application through the normal process.
Okay.
Sounds good.
One more.
Yes,
Thanks,
Counselor.
Chair. I think the other restrictions on temporary signs and the guidance, there's a lot in there already that will cover this ground. So this should be able to fit in easily. I'd welcome any ideas. So if we come back to PLD with a proposal and then we work that over and then we send that to joint or get it through the process, this will be August at best before we actually get somewheres. So any way we can expedite that process? That's probably just a comment rather than any kind of recommendation or statement. So I'll take it on myself to keep my comments short and expedite the processes.
Very fair. If we do it right the first time, I also think that expedites the process. And we've seen a lot of things go through joint committee and come out not great. And so I think if we have any opportunity to affect what goes in and something that we know that the council is interested in and seeing, it's going to make it us all not be spinning our wheels. Okay, so I'm going to open this conversation up to the public. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak about this? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Councilor Jones?
I would move to put the mayor's petition regarding Blaine sides in the industrial area on more time.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Haas. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. So we'll be looking forward to seeing some sort of more fleshed out options for us at our next PLD meeting. All right, back to our agenda. I think that we have one more item that we will probably be hearing from our mayor on. It's ordinance, oh, nope, this is a city staff one. Ordinance O-2024-19-A relating to building height in the Commerce District. And this is an item that we've already had a public hearing on, so we will not be having any public comment on this tonight, but does staff want to have any more comments before the committee discusses?
Good evening, Evan Clements, planner. Madam Chair, I don't have anything. I can be available to answer questions as the committee deliberates, but that's entirely up to you.
Okay, great, thank you. So this item was an item that we definitely went through in very close detail at the joint committee with the full members of this committee, and we had a public hearing at our last council meeting. There were no comments made from the public, and there was nothing submitted in writing. So personally, I'm very comfortable with the way that things were brought forward. We had an A version of this. We made some slight amendments, and I think that it helps promote what we'd like to see in the commerce zone while protecting the genuine or the original underlying expectation of what the commerce zone should be, and that we're hoping that we can see some additional projects maybe get added by having this in play. So I'm in support of it the way it's written, hoping that the committee has any questions that we can answer. We can get this moving forward. Councillor Haas?
Short questions. Thank you, Chair. Just on item number 2, I think, and number 1, I'm not sure the A, B's, and C's line up. And so in item number 2, we're saying that B and C are struck, but A is kept, but A is kind of in 2 places on the existing code. So I trust that's Scrivener issues, and if I can refer that back to you to make sure the final document matches up with what we have here.
Are you referring to the height and the story?
Yeah, we're, so A, in the code, it shows max 514 height, says max stories above grade, and then references A and B and says 2. So we're striking out B and C. Have the right one? Yep. And keeping A. So what we're doing here is striking out A and B and just keeping an A section. Am I reading that correctly?
So I don't have it in front of me, but the intent for both of those sections is to remove
Right.
the special stipulations for increased height and just leave it with a,
Yeah, the intent is very clear. It just doesn't seem to line up with A
So
and B.
I think that, and definitely correct me if I'm misunderstanding, Counselor, but you have the LDC open, and I'm seeing how it might look a little bit confusing if you're looking at the language in the ordinance and then you're referring it to the text in the LDC. And I think that the language in the ordinance would drive a rewrite of the text in the LDC, so those things would end up becoming clear at the end in the actual document.
That's fine.
That's fine,
Yep,
okay.
the intent is perfect. It works. So go for it.
Okay, anything else? No, awesome. Counselor Jones, did you have anything to add?
No, I think I'm sorry. I think this is great. We've been stuck at a standard for a long time that goes back to the days of when we had less fire suppression and we didn't have, we have chain run elevators and stuff like that. So we're finally catching up to the future.
Great. All right, so we will not be offering any public comment at this time, so I would ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance O 2024-19A.
Recommend the adoption.
I recommend adoption of ordinance O 2024-19A.
Second.
I have
Second.
a motion by Counselor Haas, seconded by Counselor Jones. Any questions on that motion? I think that was pretty clear. All in favor? And that is unanimous. We'll get to talk all about it again at council next week. All right, here we go. So we've moved very quickly, guys. Item number 4, Rules of Order, Section 15, Voting and Conflicts of Interest. So I am hoping that our city attorney is going to get us started on this one, and we have our mayor back to speak to this, as this was an item that was offered by the mayor's reconsideration at our council meeting, and we've been working on some drafts. Do you want to catch us up on where we are?
I actually will let the mayor do that
Okay.
because the work my office has done has just basically been transcribing what the mayor's looking for. So
Okay, that
he's
sounds
up
great.
for it.
In our packet, we have the Section 15 Voting and Conflict of Interest, and you will see that there is an incredible amount of red line. And we would be making some significant changes to the text within this section of our rules, but not necessarily in the spirit of that. So I believe that when the mayor brought this back to us, it was to align the text in our version of the rules with, is it an RSA or with a rule that the state uses for this similar consideration? So do you want to bring us full circle, Mayor?
Glad to do that, Madam Chair. So I think what is different from the original proposal, which I think were struggling with some definitions, is that in between, the state legislature adopted the Ethics Commission's recommendations for revised conflict of interest rules for the state legislature. That was signed into law by the governor in August and becomes effective January 1st of 2025 for all state legislators, including one who sits to your left. So it is now in effect, and I think that it provides us a basis for some definitions that we have struggled with. That wasn't me. So the goal in this conversation all along, which we started in the beginning of the last calendar year, is to incorporate into the city council's conflict of interest rule a definition of special interests of other members in the household of a city elected official. And that's what the state statute has done. So I appreciate the way that the city attorney has been able to take the state statute, which is in now revised statutes 14B and C, and incorporate that into our city rules. I think he's done a very good job of trying to accomplish that. So rather than defining these terms on our own, the legislature has given us this gift. It was House Bill 1388, if anybody wishes to follow the legislative history on it. So not only have these definitions been tested by the Ethics Commission and the legislative process, but they will continue to be interpreted by future Ethics Commission cases that come before them. Again, we don't, rules ought to be updated, right? There ought to be, circumstances that cause you to review it. And we don't need to rely just on our own experience. We can look to the cases that come before the state's Ethics Commission and see if those cases apply to us should we adopt this revised rule. I think the process that is being recommended here is much the same as our current conflict of interest rule. There will still be an annual filing. Counselors will still need to declare a conflict of interest, and it will be up to the full city council to determine if the special interest of a counselor or their household member is distinct from and greater than the interest of the public at large. To point you to that specific definition, I'd suggest you look at the fourth section on the first page, paragraph, where a special interest shall be deemed to exist where any person living in the same domicile as the counselor, excluding those people who might have a leasehold interest, meaning not a relative, but just somebody who's renting a room in the person's house or some comparable leasehold interest, but that people living in the same domicile as the counselor who share a common economic interest in the expenses of the daily living with the counselor, and that include but not be limited to spouses, parents, and children 18 years of older. And just to give a little bit of an example there, not every parent living in a household is contributing to the economic interests of the household, nor is a child who is 25 who has moved back home perhaps for graduate school or some other comparable reason may not be contributing to the economic interest of the household. So that needs to be a declaration by the counselor and a determination by their definition. We will always need to depend on the counselor's honesty in completing a conflict of interest form. And so what is a special interest? Well, a special interest for a counselor or a household member is defined in the second paragraph. And it's as both financial in section I, in the second paragraph, or non-financial, section II, where one has a substantial interest in the welfare of an organization. And again, this interest needs to be distinct from and greater than the interests of the public at large. So that is what causes the reporting of a special interest. And it is clear that one would, and this it gets made clear in several different places, but that in particular, I believe it's in the last paragraph, that it is the obligation of the counselor and the mayor to disclose an employer or organization where a special interest exists. It does not require that one declare a household member's position or the location of their employment. Just to make that very clear, that it is just a matter of declaring that the person is employed, the name of the employer, but nothing further than that. And then when it comes to the organization, I think that the Ethics Commission really, you can tell where they struggled, and they struggled on the declaration of organizations. And so they go pretty comprehensively to define when a substantial interest in an organization exists, that the person founded the organization. I use CASA, court-appointed special advocates, for my own personal and family interest. I founded the chapter of CASA for southwestern New Hampshire in Keene in like the year 2000. My wife currently is a CASA volunteer. So yes, both she as a volunteer in the organization who could benefit from a city allocation to CASA, and I as a person who helped found that organization in the city of Keene, both have substantial interest in the organization and its welfare. And it is the interest in the organization's welfare, well-being, that would cause us to have to declare that. It is also, if there was a membership chair of an organization, not just the officers, but somebody who is very vested in the success of the organization, that would need to then be a declaration of a potential conflict for counselors. So I think they gave us a lot to go on that should make it much clearer for counselors to be able to determine when those substantial interests exist. I just want to remind us of what is very obvious. A conflict of interest rules and laws, they exist for the transparency of the public, not for the convenience necessarily of the counselors or elected officials. The council as a whole will continue to determine if a counselor's special interests are sufficiently distinct from and greater than the general public, and hence a counselor will not be excluded from debate or a vote on a matter before the council unless the council itself perceives that their conflict exists. I think that essentially we are back to where we are with some stronger definitions of where conflicts might exist for a counselor, and that it presents us with some broader disclosure to the public of when those conflicts might exist for the counselor or members who are contributing to the counselor's economic welfare.
Okay. So I personally have supported us updating this particular rule, and I do appreciate the added language because I feel like it makes it really clear on a lot of things that we've used as a what's the term that we've used, of a policy of practice. We love that term. So I think we do have policies of practice that we use at council a lot. And when you can identify where there could be some abuses of that type of policy and you can clarify in writing in our rules, it, I think, is a benefit to the full council. We've made lots of decisions in the time that I have been here to allow counselors to not participate on financial votes as they relate to their boards or that they might sit on, but then we would allow them to participate in non-financial votes that relate to other events. Maybe the Pumpkin Fest is asking for a license to use city property, and the counselor would be allowed to participate in that vote. But when the Pumpkin Fest is asking for money in the community events funding, they would not be allowed to participate in that vote. And I think that we use this term policy of practice that, well, this is how we've always done it. But I feel like getting something down on paper that's very clear about what the expectation is and when a counselor should declare a conflict of interest and under what circumstances that conflict should occur gives us very clear guidance going forward. And I like the transparency. I think letting the public know that we're making decisions without some sort of agenda is important for their confidence in what we're doing here, as well as for all of us sitting around to be aware of what people's special interests might be as we're discussing topics. So I'm in support of the changes. I do want to hear from the rest of the committee. We have a small committee tonight. I was hoping to get all 5 of us to get some input, but I definitely want to hear from the rest of the committee and see where you guys are at. Does anyone want to get us started?
And might I, and I'll retreat and allow for your discussion, but as I understand our process for this, this is something that needs an affirmative vote of the committee to be brought forward to the city council for its first reading on this. It wouldn't be a final vote until our February 2nd meeting at its earliest date. So
So I,
first reading would be based on your recommendation on January 16th.
we would have a first reading at council, and then it would have another visit at PLD in February, and it would find its way back to council for the second meeting of February if we did not have any revisions at that time. I think that would be the fastest path that we would see this go. I definitely want to get a handle on what our abbreviated version of our committee tonight feels like, if this language is the right language that we want to be presenting for a first reading. But yes, I think that we've definitely been talking about this for several months now, and I would love to get consensus around the direction we want this to go in. So,
Very good. Thank you.
Councilor Haas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, the substantial interest is very well defined now. That's the goal for here, to make it really clear as to who has to say what, who has to tell about what within the household. It seems the word conflict has been replaced by special interest, especially down in the last paragraph of the first page. And as I read the last sentence, or next to last sentence, the bottom of the first page into the second page, it seems that the council will decide whether or not a special interest exists that would impair the ability of the counselor to judge properly. And we're not going to be deciding on a conflict. We're taking that idea out. We're just going to say, is there a special interest here that might override the public's interest? Is that how you're all understanding everything?
Yes. City Attorney.
Thank you for that point. It's sort of being a product of the statutory construction that the state has done. They've adopted sort of terms of art. So these are capitalized, you'll realize, because substantial interest, special interest, those are kind of just terms of art. They're going to be terms that are defined and used, but they are conceptually conflicts of interest. That is a category of what this is. Even the state has also called, I believe it's some of the chapters, if not the title, uses the phrase conflicts of interest, and then they use these specific definitions. So,
Yeah, and so it's just instead of judging whether there's a conflict, we'll judge if the conditions for a conflict exist, and then make the decision on that. That's a big change, very significant. It strikes me as much less adversarial when the time comes. You're not telling somebody that, oh, you're in conflict here. Just up on top, we're changing the word issue as they say, to item. And then in the first sentence of the second section on the first page, we still have the word issue. Am I missing a reason that that's still issue, or?
that probably should be changed. Yeah. So thank you for flagging that, but I'll just double check with Tom.
So just pointing out here on our red line version that the item after discussion used to read issue and has been redlined to item. And then the second paragraph down, I need to go up a page. Yep. Keep going.
First sentence, second paragraph.
So this is your first change of issue to item.
Oh, there it
And
is,
then
okay.
in this paragraph, you'll find an issue is used again instead of the word that supplanted it in the first paragraph.
Thank you.
Are those your couple of comments on it so far?
So far.
So far, awesome. Counselor Jones.
Okay, so those issue words are changed, are noted in the background notes, and
Yep.
We don't have to do anything with that. Okay, and, no, I think, this is an issue where we did sometimes get into the weeds, and I was one of them that did get into the weeds on this, and, I want to thank the mayor for the clarity. He did address some of the issues I had from the beginning. Yes, this did go through the state last year, a lot faster than it went through here. Went through went to a committee, was voted 20-0, and then it just went to the House without any discussion at all. Thank you very much. This did clear up the parts that I had concerns with, so I look forward to seeing this go through the process.
Great. I would ask that any member of the public would like to speak on this, but I feel like we have lost our public listenership in the room tonight. So I hope that everybody's going to follow along at home. But it sounds like we've kind of come to a consensus that we are ready to get a first draft of this presented to council. Does that sound correct? Yes,
Madam Chair,
Councilor
one
Hudson?
more item. So when, on the second page, second paragraph, we switch over to the mayor shall also be subject to the rule on conflict of interest. And as I read that, not as a lawyer, but as I read that, that means subject to the conditions in this section, since the section is titled voting and conflict of interest. But then the mayor would fall into all of those other classifications or categorizations of special interest rather than the word conflict again.
So I think we would ask that the city attorney read that paragraph because the term conflict of interest is used twice in the red line version instead of the term special interest. And I think we just have to make sure that we're being consistent. If it might be appropriate for it to say conflict of interest, but I think just a quick purview of that before we submit it to the council would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We good? All right. Counselor Jones, I would be open for a motion.
I would move to recommend that the city attorney introduce for first reading the revisions of Rule 15, voting and conflicts of interest as proposed by the committee.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Haas. Do we have any questions on that motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. So we'll get a updated version in front of the council next week. And then hopefully we will hear from some counselors if they have any concerns or any updates that they'd like to see PLD address at our February meeting. And hopefully we'll get to a place where we can present a final version of this back to our fellow counselors. And with that, we have got to the end of our regular agenda tonight. We do have some items on more time. We'll be talking about those at upcoming meetings. But for tonight, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.